We're going to start off by discussing the important part of any great company, and that is the problem that it is solving. And right now, there's a huge plastic waste problem, but truly, how big is it? Why has it persisted so far despite a lot of companies making heavy investments to try to solve it?
In terms of numbers, there's about 400 million tons that society throw out every year. It's over a little bit over 400 million tons, of which today about 10% is basically recycled. The rest is going anywhere and anywhere. About 1% is chemical recycling, about maybe 9% is mechanical recycling. Most of the companies that us, all of us are hearing in the market, they're doing chemical recycling or dealing with this 1%. So there's a lot of material that stays unused in the market, and that gives an opening for companies like Aduro that can maybe do something that is a little bit different from whatever the peers are doing. So that's the major opportunity. This is beyond the billions of tons that are already in the ground. Opportunity is there because society has basically had enough with plastic everywhere. Plastic, we love plastic. We deal with plastic. We can't imagine the world without it. It's anywhere, right? It's in space. It's in education. It's in hospitals. It's everywhere, really. But really, we have challenges to deal with it when it's done, where we finish the use of it. And one of the biggest problems is that plastic is very, very cheap. A lot of resources have been invested to make plastic, but then once it's out there and we finish using with it, it's creating a bigger problem in society. I think overall, had enough and demands one way or the other, some way of just solving the issues.
I think innovation is a great place to pick up off that because I want to talk a little bit about hydrochemolytic, which is or
Calculated. Yeah.
hydrochemolytic
Yeah.
technology, which is HCT. It might be
Mhm.
good to just define this for the audience first and explain what it is.
Yeah. As for the name, I always say that this is what happened when you give, a technical guy to do some marketing. That's what you get. But what it is in a nutshell, it's a catalytic process that uses very low value of catalyst, really, really low in value. And then it also, instead of hydrogen, takes something like a simple material like glycerol and ethanol and methanol and literally replace the need for hydrogen. And when you combine both things in the same space, what you really get is this ability to break what we call carbon-carbon bonds, so very specific chemistry that we're doing. And then within that minute that we're breaking those bonds, we're actually hydrogenating them with that type of material. And so by us doing this, we are basically opening a new way to chemical recycling, which literally at the beginning is primarily motivated by heat, one way or the other. So the motivation is not the catalyst, but the heat, and it's breaking everything apart. And then the moment you're doing it, and I'm talking about primarily our peers, the pyrolysis companies, then you would require hydrogenation, literally molecular hydrogen. And so, us not needing to use hydrogen and us being able to produce material that is, let's say it's a high quality without the need of hydrogen, and us doing some selective chemistry on the other side give us a lot of advantage in compared to the others. We are generally operating at a lower temperature, which effectively means when you're operating at a lower temperature, you have higher yield. The yield that we're producing is actually quite better than our peers companies in many ways. It's high quality, and then we have higher tolerance for a little bit more for contamination, and so that's also something that is very important because most of our peers require literally the best of the best. They require. We talk about polyolefin, so we talk about level of, let's say, 90% polyolefin and 10% contamination. This is a great starting point for us, but we can do 85%, and we're working now on ways to do 80% and even 75%. Not to say that we want 25% garbage in our reactors. We do have ways to deal with that, and we look at that. But just to say that the technology has a lot of configurability, and this is part of the advantage. And the last item that HCT represent is the scale up. So I talked before about the fact that many of our peers require has some challenges in in terms of the chemistry, and because of that, they have some challenges economically. Us being able to do much smaller scales on on an economic size, and then not need the hydrogen around it, and us dealing with material that could be let's say a little bit more contaminated on the other hand, and doing some configuration around that provide allow us literally to imagine different business models rather than the usual standalone business model, which is often centralized location, a lot of sorting inside, a lot of investment capital costs associated with that, and some form of hydrogen feeding, which is super expensive and also negative on the environment. So, in a nutshell, it's a technology that steps aside from the mainstream. And that, if you know how to materialize those advantages, then you have different opportunities. And now you see why the sky is, we feel, is the limit for the company. Can you do it economically? Well, we believe yes, and actually quite well. But this is where the scale up and the work that we are doing in stages, right? And we've been trying to be not trying, but transparent with our audience, the investors, to gain their trust. And every year we mention certain things that we are doing alongside of the commercialization path, and every year we work to achieve them. In this case, this year is the pilot buildup and finishing of design of the demo unit, and we're well on the way on both ends to do both of those things. They're super important, and so the economics will feed in and build in. And why do we have this comfort level that the economics is better than the whatever is available out there right now? Well, because we're working at a lower temperature, our yield is much higher, the value of the crude is big, is better. We already test that. We cannot solve all problems, and we cannot do all plastic. It's very specific plastic that are represent about 70% of the waste that is out there, and the hardest of the hardest. And so there is inherent benefits already in whatever we, and those things have been tested. The question is really, how do we commercialize it? And so we rather do it in stages, step by step. There's no way around it. And every year, I think we're bringing more knowledge and more know-how outside to the investors to look at what we've been doing and gain the confidence.
Thanks for having me, Wolf. Awesome product you guys are building at Aduro. Great to meet you. This is a true passion project of mine because I grew up in Bangladesh where I saw massive plastic pollution. And to this day, I'm my father. He worked for Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who's our prime minister, and we're still very well connected. And I would love to bring, what you guys are doing to places like the developing world. Is that something you're open to? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
It is actually a brilliant question because what we see is that even the poorest countries in the world are very concerned. I had a wonderful experience just a couple of months ago when I learned that the Philippines are putting in this really substantial scheme to let companies that market plastics, consumer good companies, to let them pay for collecting it and making sure it finds a good home. So the market is there. The numbers are, of course, colossal. The problem is much bigger than in our countries where at least there is collection happening. And yes, we would be very, very open to bring it forward. The important thing is, of course, you do need an industrial infrastructure to make it work. But then the good thing is that our technology is relatively uncomplicated and the product that we make is easily shipped. So yes, we could make it available to places where probably the problem is biggest and the challenges are biggest as well.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Because I will pass this message on directly to the administration there.
We do not turn plastic into fuel because that is the big pitfall. Because if you do recycle and you turn it into fuel, you will not be credited with recycling. The good thing is we turn it into the raw material for new plastic.
For example, where I'm at right now, in Jamaica, like for most people, what they will do with their plastics, or even small companies, is they just burn it. They have incinerators, which obviously creates another problem. But they have recently created a push to basically get people to package it, separate it, and bring it in, and they'll pay you by the pound and so forth. So now that is obviously because of the problems that were mentioned before, is now at the forefront, like recycling plastics, separating it, and so forth. A country or a region that might not have all the infrastructure in place, how much of investment would they possibly have to, for a smaller facility to get one of these things up and running, as opposed to the traditional options that are currently out there, if that makes sense? Because a lot of times, like, when there's the problem there, but then where's the budget coming for that? I think that's like one of the bigger problems. So as far as where this is going to grow, I think, in my mind anyways, it would depend a lot on the budget and the available funds needed to do such a thing.
If you do this on Jamaica, you will have your plastic, you will have the hands to sort it. You can put the PET bottles apart because we can handle them, but you have another home for that. If you then install a machine of ours on the island, the product, and that is contrary to all the others, is stable enough to ship. So you can just put it on a boat and ship it to Houston and let somebody be bothered with it over there. And I think that is a very important thing. It is not only that it is modular and it is already viable at a smaller scale because of its relative simplicity, but also the product, you can go somewhere. Whereas quite a few competitive products pretty much have to be used close to where they are generated. And then you're, of course, in trouble if you don't happen to have a mega chemical industry in your backyard.
What gives management confidence in the HGT sales? Just because we have gotten a couple questions around HGT, it'd probably be good to talk a little bit more about your confidence in that scaling.
We've been doing this for the last a little bit more than 10 years, right? The confidence doesn't come from the final data that you see. The confidence comes from the envelope parameters that we see that are working, meaning the fact that you're using enable low value catalysts, the fact that you really literally don't need hydrogen, the fact that we're already proving a lot of those things, the fact that you have high tolerance to contaminated material. All of those things allow us and give us the confidence that we could scale and we could operate. And now the question is, how do you scale that? And that's another, I'll say, expertise by its own. So every year we set up certain goals, and I guess 2 years ago it was to finish the design of the pilot that we're doing now. And so I can tell the audience that 2 years ago we already worked on a design, and a year ago we actually bought long lead item equipment that was not entirely in the design. And commitment was to come and commission this thing as we speak right now. And this is what happened right now. And so this is work in stages, where this is not an go, no go machine. This is, all of our knowledge, all of the work that the R&D has been doing in the background, the operation, the engineers, in stages, give us this confidence to build to the next phase. And in fact, as we speak right now, if you look at our documentations, we already committed to finish the design of the demonstration unit, and we're well on our way to do that. This is before the end of the year. We also say that we're going to buy long lead item very, very soon that are related to that demonstration unit. And so where's the confidence in that? That is last year work, this is next year work, and this is, the year before work. This is where the confidence is coming in terms of the scale up. So far, happy to say we haven't seen what we call red lights. There's always work to do, there's always correction to make, there's always lead time to do. But so far, the way we're progressing, we haven't seen red lights that, break this whole paradigm apart. On the contrary, the more we are earning data, the more our confidence build up, and the more now we take a little bit more courage to buy more expensive things, if you will, to the bigger system.
In scaling, there are two issues. It is about heating up things that get bigger and bigger, and it is like baking a cake in your oven. If you make your cake twice as big, it takes 4 times as long before the heart of the cake is done. Now that is heat transfer, and the other thing is all about mixing. And you can imagine if your pot gets bigger and the porridge gets thicker, think of plastic, you have to make sure, you have to stir much, much harder. Now, the very choice of equipment that works for our process is equipment that has been known for decades, if not hundreds of years, and everybody knows how they scale. So we know precisely that if we want to mix it at 10 times as big volume, we know precisely how much stirring power we have to add. And you just have to believe me, it is especially our ability to use that very well known and very well researched equipment that makes not only our process relatively cheap and easy to replicate, but also very easy to scale, because the scaling rules are there. We know them in the chemical industry. Whereas a lot of our competing technologies do need to do all that work themselves and do a lot of research. We can just go to the supplier and say, "Oh, we want to have one that is 3 times as big." And he says, "Oh, yeah, then you need 4.7 times as much power." And then we know precisely what the effect is going to be. Bit of a technical answer, but the story is it is actually the choice of equipment that makes it very easy to scale. And we know it now.
So although we're scaling our technology for the plastic waste, which is our first go-to-market application, but I don't want to minimize, of course, that we're always spending a little bit of time. It's not, majority is focused on the plastic waste here, but a little bit of our time, of course, is on building our pipeline of other applications. We've mentioned in 2025 a couple of really interesting segments, one being the artificial turf. And we mentioned, I think there's others that are coming down the pipeline as well. I think next year we're going to even mention a few others. But more importantly, it's not only multiple applications under the HCT or the hydrokinetic technology, right? Given the powerhouse that we have in terms of our team, our R&D, we are also likely to have other technologies that come out of the work that we're doing under HCT. So that's something that I keep on thinking about as at a high level, that, we're likely to see multiple companies under the umbrella of Aduro